I am joined by a special guest for this next session. We're calling this session Selling the Sauce.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be partnering with the ERG movement. If we have not had the pleasure to meet yet, my name is Michael Anthony Cummings III, but you could call me Mac3. I am a strategist, I'm a consultant, I'm a coach, I'm a professional. I currently work at Amazon, a small company that delivers packages. You might know us, but I'm currently a senior supply chain manager. I've been with Amazon for 5 years. In that role at Amazon, I've been able to do some pretty amazing things. And you might be wondering why I'm here and why you should listen to me. So while I've been at Amazon, I've been able to have 8 different roles in 5 years. And I've been able to increase my base salary by 20.9% year after year. And while doing this, I also was able to become one of the global presidents for our Black Employee Network, which is around 28,000 members actively throughout the globe. We're represented in all 6 countries. We have over 1,000. Organizing and leading that group of individuals could be very trying, but you also learn a lot. Things like we might have turned $100,000 into 6.9 million in economic return. So I may be able to teach you a couple things.
What's up, y'all? I like to say I'm just a guy who does kind of cool things. Nobody special. I did have the pleasure of serving as one of the largest ERG leaders on planet Earth, as one of the co-leads for Amazon's Black Employee Network over the last 2.5 years. And prior to that, right, I was on every single level of ERG leadership at the same time across our Black Employee Network. So local chapter lead, a site operations chapter lead, on the global board as the finance director, and on our affiliate chapter as engagement lead for recruiting for all persons in finance. So, I know what it's like to sit in all chairs from the top to the bottom and now as an advisor as well. So happy to be here to show you a little bit about, the sauce. I know you heard from my former co-president, Mike, and I'm just looking forward to empowering your community with a little bit of nuggets. All right. So the purpose of this is just explain why authenticity matters, right? And define what it means to sell your sauce and how do you sell it.
I found out about the Black Employee Network at Amazon because someone suggested it to me. And I was like, this actually exists. We can have organizations that talk about our cultures at work. Sign me up. I started getting involved. And once I got involved, I kind of didn't know how to navigate. Once I figured out my footing, I was able to actually lead with purpose because I've been in a lot of different leadership areas before. But what we're really going to talk about today is how you can make your impact valuable, not only to yourself, but also to the other people who are involved. So first, let's talk about what sauce is. The definition for sauce is style, confidence, authenticity, personal flavor, the unique qualities that make someone stand out and bring excellence, charisma, and originality to their work and relationships.
And the relationships is really what the key to growth is in any business, but let alone in the engagement business, which is, the backbone of ERG work. Everyone gets tired of eating the same food, served the same way, and eventually things just become stale, boring, and you lack engagement. So you got to always remember to be fresh, to be yourself, and continue to find ways that you can be helpful.
You can sell sauce in a way that isn't tasteful. So this is why you want to be authentic. This is why you want to communicate stories that have actually happened. This is why you want to communicate things that you know, because once you get an opportunity, once you actually, or you have buy-in from selling the sauce, you actually have to execute. So you want to make sure that the impact that you're sharing is tangible.
It's really just a 4-part framework, right? You identify the vision that you have to be able to share that vision in a way that others can understand it. Then you have to align that vision with the visions of the people that you want to impact. How can you help them with the thing that you're trying to actually produce for them? And then you have to execute on that. It's harder done than it is said, right? But we're going to make sure that we give you a couple of little tangible steps.
So I mentioned it before, but let me break it down a little easier. Essentially, when you're selling sauce, you're selling a vision. You're selling a story. You're selling something that you know can be beneficial. We need food to survive. So you're giving something to someone that they need to survive. So first you want to identify your vision. I'll give you an example of this. At the Black Employee Network, we took over in 2023, and it was a strategy, but it wasn't really a solidified strategy. So we had to evaluate all of the things that were there and then see where we would like it to be in the future. So identifying the vision, you actually have to write that down. If you just have a goal and it's not written down, it's a wish. So you want to write things down. You want to make sure that you have tangible dates. You want to make sure that you have action plans, and you identify this vision. Now, the next step is you want to share this vision. You want to share the things that you've cooked up, but you have to share it with people and make sure that it's mutually beneficial. So when we created this 18-month strategy, we broke it up into 3 different 6-month segments. Each segment had a different theme and a focus. And in those different themes and focus, we identified the value that would come to the member, our business unit, and our external partners who will collaborate with us as well. So that's where we're showing everyone, this is why it's so important that you should collaborate with this vision. So once we were able to share this vision, we have to make sure that people align to it. So once you share an idea with someone, if they have a mutual beneficial interest in it, they're probably going to provide some suggestion. And it may be something that you didn't even notice. We went through around, I think, 16 revisions of our strategy document. And that was because it had to go through, once we got through the first level of leadership, we had to go through senior leadership. Once we got through senior leadership, we had to get through executive leadership, because this was a global strategy that was going to impact over 400,000 people. So we wanted to make sure that we had buy-in, everyone was aligned with the strategy. And then once everyone was aligned with the strategy, this is the hardest part that a lot of people don't really kind of focus on, because once you get the alignment and everybody's on board, they think that that's the end. But once you get alignment, once you have a solidified plan, you actually have to execute. And when you execute, that's where you track the metrics. That's where you track the impact. That's where you make sure that you can sell the sauce. You can have more buy-in. And this is where you get other stories that you may have from the different people that you partner with. So in our 18-month strategy, at the end of the strategy, we had a Ben Global Summit where we brought together all of our members and we actually showed them how we actually created this strategy. We created this vision, how we partnered with our executive stakeholders, and how we actually executed and showed the value and impact to our business leaders, so they can see that ERGs aren't just community groups. They actually can be tangible resources that drive economic impact for the business and our employees. So it's a mutually beneficial impact. And I keep saying mutually beneficial because I strongly believe in it. And you have to make sure that whatever you're doing has value to someone else.
You got to know yourself. You got to take inventory of what you're really good at, not just what you think you're good at, but what people say you're good at. And that becomes your superpower.
Everybody has a superpower. Those lived experiences that you have, the things you've gone through, the things that you've had to experience and overcome, those are stories and techniques that you can provide to other people. So for instance, my superpower is understanding different people's paths in the workspace, because my mother, she was either underqualified or overqualified for roles. So she was always frustrated and she couldn't communicate to senior leadership. So I always wanted to be that person to bridge the gap. And I developed that as a superpower.
So for me, my thing was numbers and finance. I started my career off as an investment banker, and I was able to take large financial concepts, break them down into tangible nuggets, and be able to feed people good information so that way they can add financial metrics to the work that they were doing. So started off as a small regional site leader and was able to then create the financial model that became the basis for how all ERGs got their funding across Amazon. So I say that as an example to say, I took my knowledge of just really being good at Excel and being able to understand numbers to be able to influence the C-suite.
So once you identify these superpowers, you can use these superpowers to help others, and you can help them identify their own superpowers. You can help them deliver results consistently. You can help them master different aspects of the ERG space. So because I have a focus on emotional intelligence, that was something that I first focused on when I got into the ERG space. That's where I created a 10-week series where we talked about different aspects of emotional intelligence. And it really was just sharing my personal experiences. But by sharing those personal experiences, which are essentially kind of superpowers, I was able to help other people. And that got me to the place where I was able to be elected as a global president. You have to be able to identify what value that superpower brings. So because I can help identify gaps in communication, that means I can streamline efficiencies. I can streamline processes. I can communicate these things to different business leaders and find value for both business units. So once you identify your superpower, you have to hone in on it and you have to utilize it to help other people, to make sure that you are also growing your network, growing the different things that you're doing.
So you got to think about what's your superpower and make that your brand excellence. So what are you good at? How can you help others with it? And then you have to be able to continuously help people. So if people come to you and you knock it out the park every time, you use that to tie that into company goals and initiatives, see what company gaps exist, and be able to drive value that way, communicate that value. And this is the key piece here. If you're not telling the story, no one's going to tell it for you. So you have to figure out the creative ways to go about doing that. And I know Ms. Owens has already dropped you a lot of key nuggets on how to do that today. And then you have to put together the empirical numbers, right? So one thing to be qualitative, you also have to be quantitative. So when you think about the metrics, she was just giving you the breakdown in terms of engagement and, 25% being a healthy metric score. You got to know what the North Star metric is for the thing that you're trying to impact and be able to tie your story and your superpower and how you're driving value in that area to it. And then from there, you just got to keep helping more and more people. The best way to help yourself is to help others. And then the more people that you have as, customers that can say, I experienced this person's work product and it was awesome. Or I experienced this person's engagement event and it was awesome. The word works on word of mouth and reviews. So if you bought anything online, the power of reviews. But if you've been able to work and network, the power of someone giving you a good word. And this is how you continue to sell yourself as excellence and sell your sauce. So that way, before you even step in a room, you already have a brand around you that people know, I come to this person for X.
And as you increase your superpower abilities, you'll be able to help more people. And the more people that you can help, the greater impact you have. And the greater impact you have, the more buy-in that you have when you're selling this sauce.
Once you find what makes you you and how you can make everyone around you better, there's literally an infinite supply within yourself that costs you nothing to go out here and impact and change people's lives. And if I can do it as, a regular Joe Schmo guy working in a facility in Macon, Georgia, I don't know many of you guys who've been to Macon, Georgia, and if you're from Macon, Georgia, no disrespect, but it's not the most populated place on earth. And if I can go from there to literally the top of the food chain, the largest ERG in the world, you can do it too.
When you're selling sauce and you're trying to make things mutually beneficial to different stakeholders, you got to make sure that you're focused on the 3 R's. So that's return on investment, return on involvement, and return on impact. So return on investment, you want to make sure that there's some type of monetary return, whether that's employees have a higher morale. So that means that they're going to have a higher output after attending one of these events. If it's that you've been able to partner with the local community nonprofit, so you're donating to the nonprofit, which looks good for the company and also helps the community. Whatever it is, there has to be a monetary aspect to what you're doing, and you have to quantify it. So return on involvement. Return on involvement, you want to make sure that you can measure the things that you were engaged. One of my sayings is data is the new oil. And one of the things that I've identified in the ERG space is called net promoter scores, so NPSs. And that's how you can identify customer engagement scores, and you can identify promoters versus detractors, and you can identify on a scale of -100 to 100, how likely this event is to be recommended to another colleague, another employee, another representative. But this is how you can measure engagement. And a lot of people may not be familiar with it, but net promoter scores is something that you can identify to measure involvement. You can also measure how many people attended. You can also measure how many business units you partner with. That's return on involvement. So return on impact, this is where, as I mentioned before, you may partner with a community service or an NGO or an NPO, and you have a mutual beneficial relationship because you're helping a nonprofit, you're helping the community, and you're also driving economic awareness to maybe Black-owned businesses or Latino-owned businesses or LGBTQ businesses. But whatever you're doing, you have to find a way, after you can measure it and you can identify who's involved, you have to be able to measure the impact that these people are having. So another way that you can do this is by having surveys and collecting or having surveys and collecting quotes from those surveys and using that as your impact reports. Because after you sell sauce, you have to be able to communicate the things that you've done. So you can go to different stakeholders. You got to make sure that you're focused on the 3 R's. So that's return on investment, return on involvement, and return on impact. So return on investment, you want to make sure that there's some type of monetary return, whether that's employees have a higher morale, so that means that they're going to have a higher output after attending one of these events. If it's that you've been able to partner with the local community nonprofit, so you're donating to the nonprofit, which looks good for the company and also helps the community. There has to be a monetary aspect to what you're doing, and you have to quantify it. So return on involvement, you want to make sure that you can measure the things engaged. One of my sayings is data is the new oil. One of the things that I've identified in the ERG space is called net promoter scores. So and that's how you can identify customer engagement score, and you identify promoters versus detractor, and you can identify on a scale of -100 to 100 how likely this event is to be recommended to another colleague, employee, another representative. But this is how you can measure engagement, and a lot of people may not be familiar with it, but net promoter scores is something that you can identify to measure involvement. You can also measure how many people attended. You can also measure how many business units you partner with. That's return on involvement. So return on impact, this is where you may partner with a community service, NGO or NPO, and you have a mutual beneficial relationship because you're helping a nonprofit, you're helping the community, and you're also driving economic awareness to maybe Black-owned businesses or Latino-owned businesses or LGBTQ businesses. But whatever you're doing, you have to find a way, after you can measure it and you can identify who's involved, you have to be able to measure the impact that these people are having. Another way that you can do this is by having surveys and collecting quotes from those surveys and using that as impact on your return statements. Or visual learner myself, so we actually have a video for you that's going to show you a real world example of how we identified an idea, and that idea was to have a global summit where we brought together different chapter leaders from around our organization to bring them together for a couple days to have empowerment, learnings and understandings, networking opportunities, and a chance to engage with the community. During that summit, we were able to partner with the Atlanta Braves during their HBCU night. We were able to partner with Two Chainz Nonprofit Foundation. We were able to partner with our local Meals on Wheels, which is a nonprofit that's dedicated to, in the Atlanta area, that's dedicated to servicing elderly individuals who don't have access to food. We also were able to partner with several different business units to have different engagements and activations. We also partnered with the local HBCU charter school, where we were able to provide some volunteer hours and also volunteer at a children's hospital as well. So all of this came from an idea and came from us selling that idea to our executives. So we had enough buy-in where we could execute. And once we actually got the buy-in, we actually had to do the thing we said we were going to do. This is what you need to do to sell the sauce. You need to have a vision. Once you have that vision, you need to be able to write that vision down and communicate it. And once you communicate that vision, you have to put your superpower in there to make sure that people can have that understanding that this is something different. This isn't a regular idea. Because this person is bringing me this idea, I'm bought in. I find it valuable, that it's mutually beneficial, and I want to help. And once you have that buy-in, you start the execution process. And once you do the execution process, you have to communicate those results. You have to be able to measure that return. You have to be able to measure the impact, and you have to be able to measure the involvement, and you definitely have to measure the investment. As I mentioned before, we turned $100,000 into $6.9 million in economic return. Once we started having those conversations, started telling executives, the conversation shifted. They didn't look at us as an ERG. They looked at us as a business unit, because that's how we wanted to communicate ourselves. That's how we wanted to hold ourselves. And that's how you sell some sauce. And once you sell sauce, and once people taste your sauce and they know that it's good, they're going to keep coming to you for more. They're going to keep asking you for more ideas. They're going to keep asking you for more impact. And it's going to be at a point where, like, you're going to have to hold on. This sauce is for sale, but it's a little pricey now.
I mean, ERG leaders, they have their sometimes like summits and things like that. But for y'all to do that, like as an ERG leader, not as a program manager, to pull that together and to make the case is something.
Yeah, and the craziest part is we did it in 45 days, from planning to execution, and the cost of the summit was way higher than the budget that we had. So we had to use a lot of relationships. All of these things were due to the value we was able to exchange by selling our sauce and creating partnerships. And the sponsorship that we got internally was from the love, from the work that we have historically been able to do, from building operational channels to building up chapters across the network to helping other ERGs across. And that's ultimately why, I reached out to you and said, look, like, this is great that what we're doing at Amazon, but like, how can we do this in a more impactful space? Because one company doesn't dictate the whole market. And I know everyone's looking at us as the leaders. And that's what I'm really excited about this opportunity with this cohort, right? Because we're able to take the lessons that we were able to bring to the forefront, take all of the best practices that we were able to perfect and master. And we've been helping advise other different corporations through our consulting team. But when we saw the work that you were doing with the ERG movement, we've been watching you for a few years. I know we first connected almost 3 years ago. We couldn't wait to find a partner who's for the community and really stands on real tangible value. So, um, we got some exciting things in the work. You want to tell them a little bit about the cohort coming up?
I feel like if there's two ERG leaders who've led one of the biggest global ERGs ever and who have done a ton of strategic things and also know how to talk about the value to it, I think that that's something that I've really been wanting to create for a while. So I'm super excited to say we do have something new that is launching officially next month. It's been highly, highly requested, and I'm just going to tell you, like, spots are limited. We're doing this as a tester for now, and I'm assuming that you all are probably going to like it. But anyway, we're officially calling it ERG Chef School. Again, ERG leaders, if they're supposed to be going from home cooks to chefs, aka we're teaching them the skill of community facilitation the same way that like a chef would get the skill of cooking. Well, I feel like we needed something robust like that that really encompasses everything when it comes to how to be a good community facilitator. So this is actually going to be our 7-week cohort. So it's going to be 7 weeks in a row where each week is a like intensive workshop, but coming out of it, the idea is that we're giving ERG leaders the skill of being community facilitators, not just giving them one-off ideas here and there. Not to mention, we have Mac 3 and Pablo, who you'll meet later, who will be like guest facilitators in that too. But again, 7 weeks of value back to back. You can see the agenda and the different weekly topics that we'll have. I just dropped that in the chat there. So if you're interested, now's the time, because like I said, this will hit a cap for sure. I have been having so many people ask me to do this.
So just a little bit of teaser of the things that we're able to produce. But we work with, Coca-Cola, IBM, Salesforce, Microsoft, and helping a lot of those people throughout their affinity groups. And we got some cool things that we'll be able to bring to the table that I'm pretty sure will blow a lot of you guys' mind in terms of like how you actually can drive impact and value